Oh, thank God it popped back up. Man, if it had just crashed on me, that would suck. But that is, by all means, a word of warning. You know, if you do have a scene and it feels rather complicated, or it's starting to get a little bit complicated with a lot of textures, so on and so forth, I highly recommend you know, dealing with saving it. So I'm going to do that now. Actually, I'm going to save this scene as a render demo. There we go. So I've put on depth buffer AA. I believe it helps the anti-aliasing work a little bit better. It might even speed up renders. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't really played around with it too much. Ray trace occlusion has also been turned on. This should increase the effectiveness of your occlusion, the accuracy of it, which is all good and dandy. You notice that adding environment didn't really change anything. It probably didn't change anything at all, but you know, if you have any objects that do reflect things, I highly recommend doing that, because that's just how it works. It works better that way. So I've entered the properties of my light that I've got here by pressing P, and the reason why I've done that is I'm going to take a look at the color of it. First of all, ambient light should be turned off because we're going to be adding a backlight. Light intensity can actually be turned up, and we're actually going to change the color to a sort of sun-like color. Now if you have LightWave 11.6, they have a Fahrenheit sort of radar that allows you to actually choose the temperature of your light, which is very useful if you're trying to get a sun type of look. But I don't have 11.6 right now, so I'm just going to play around until I get something relatively nice looking in there. Now under shadows, in reality a shadow is not pure black, it's actually slightly blue, kind of like a dark blue. So we're going to add a little bit of color to our shadow just to make it look a little bit more realistic. 21, I usually go around 16 to 21, around there. Just works a little bit better, I find. Now we're actually going to add a second light by cloning this one by pressing Control C, and what we're going to do is we're going to reverse it by reversing the H and the P, which can be done, whoops, I think it's, nope, I just have to play around with these for a second. I'm being a bit dumb, I believe. One of them is not matching up. I think that's just me being stupid. Hold on. Take a quick look. Make sure it matches perfectly, like so. I find that a bit weird that I had to do that. Anyways, whatever. Whatever works. So we kind of get almost like a sun shape from this. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to greatly decrease the strength of this one. Let's go about maybe 20%, and we're going to add a slight blue hue to it. Like so. Shadows we are going to turn off. You do not want your second light to also be casting shadows. That will be very awkward and very annoying. Now we're going to take another render of our newly rendered scene. It's going to have a little bit more orange color to it. It's going to have sort of like a sunset color almost, which kind of makes sense because this is at an angle that's almost like a sunset. We're also going to have a bit of a back color, maybe a bit of a teeny bit of a blue tinge to it, which is also what we're looking for. Alrighty, So you can see as the shadow spreads out, we are getting a little bit more of a blue color to it. Let's show you what these lights do. So let's take a look at our blue one. Let's turn off its intensity and see if it's making any difference. If it isn't, then we have to increase its intensity to make it make a difference. So I'm just going to let it render. As you can see, it's not making a massively noticeable difference. And I'm switching between the two. So, to make it make a difference, let's go 80, change it to more of a blue color. We can also actually change the position of it if we wish to. We can actually give it more, we can make it affect less of an angle and actually make it affect more behind it a little bit. Or a little bit more that direction. No, we want it to be a little bit more behind. Aim it more at the ground. Let's not increase its power too much. And we could potentially add a bit to the side like that. So now we can actually see some blue tinge here. This does not actually represent your render very well. So take that in mind. It's not actually going to be that blue, and if it is, we can always change it up a bit. So we're waiting for this to pass up. Do I have internet connection? That I appear to do. There we go. Now we're getting some difference. So let's actually take this and turn it off. It was at 65.65 or 65.5. Now if we render again, you'll notice that all this blue tinge here, here, and all this blue along there will disappear. Just watch these. And there we go. It adds almost like an ambient sense of, you know, we're actually out in the wilderness. There's lights everywhere, or not really lights everywhere, but there's, you know, light bouncing around. You know, you have, you know, things reflecting off of, like light reflecting off of certain objects. You know, like it gives a sense of, you know, you're actually somewhere. Whereas having just one light appears to just kind of really dull everything. And that just adds, it really does, it just adds more to the scene. It makes it a lot more worth it, as you can see. And because bump maps and normal maps work off of light position and light areas, having more lights will affect the bump maps more, and as a result make it pop out just a little bit more, which is really necessary. Now, for the next tip on lighting, we're going to add a third light. This third light is going to be a specular light. Its purpose is to do one thing, and that is increase specularity. It's not hugely effective when it comes to dealing with lighting a scene, because we make it pretty darn weak, but we do make it purely white, and we decrease its effectiveness until it becomes just slightly more noticeable. The benefit of this is it will not only increase the effectiveness of our bump mapping and our normal mapping, but it will indeed give us some very good specular effectiveness. Now, if you wanted it to affect only the specularity, which you might if you want, things like a glass bottle, a plate to be more specular, you can actually turn off diffuse. It will not affect the scene's diffuse at all, but having the extra bit of specularity is quite worth it. Generally, I actually do leave effect OpenGL on, because if you're going to have a specular light coming from a direction, you kind of want that to also affect the diffuse as well. Not in all cases, but in most cases you kind of do. So we're just going to let it pass through its render time. As you can see, we've gone from 0.7 seconds to about 30 in almost no time. And now you can see, boy, does this look good. Everything is bumped out, everything is really soft, the shadow is beautiful looking. We don't have any extra shadows because we disabled the shadows except for on the one light. We can make this just a little bit more sunset-like, add just a little bit more color to it, and then we can take a render of it at that point. And the next thing we're going to talk about is going to be the ambient on collision, which is always important and always nice to have. It will add a little bit of extra depth, and it will add a wonderful amount of shading where shading is, well, required. So we're just going to wait for it. A little bit of a nice sunset going on there, boy. Let's retract that just a little bit. Nah, I kind of like it. But in between. Yeah, let's go in between. Quite nice, very beautiful looking. Even these little teeny cracks along there are starting to pop out quite a bit. It's quite stunning, isn't it? How we've been able to change a scene so much just by changing some light positions. By the way, these lights here work much like a distant light. A distant light and a dome light do not have to be positioned in a certain way. They have to be rotated in a certain way. So I can position this light here anywhere I want. It will not change anything. You can imagine it as infinite light raining down across all points. I just kept it in the center because I felt as though that was relatively required. It just felt nice to me. What matters is the rotation of a dome light and a distant light. That's the only thing that matters, nothing else, nothing more. So keep that in mind. You have to keep that in mind. You have to remember that, because that's very important when it comes to dealing with this. So that is that. Next, we're going to take a look at some ambient on collision stuff for fun. If you've not seen my previous video on ambient on collision, please do look at that. It also covers some anti-aliasing, which is always nice to know, of course. Actually, let's re-expand that. It makes me wish I had double monitors, but then again, I don't think I can record two monitors at the same time. As you can see, it already has GMIL Occlusion added to it, and we will be indeed adding Occlusion to our box this time. And the reason why is because Occlusion also affects bump maps, normal maps, as well as displacement maps. So you're going to want to take that in mind. So this is already turned on. It's got some quality added to it. So all we got to do is turn it on. As usual, it's under the shaders tab, and then GMIL right there. And we can take another render. We know where it's going to pop up. It should pop up around here and around here. it will actually kind of pop up everywhere, and the reason why is because we got normal maps and bump maps put onto our ground. So that's important to notice. And as you can see, it has increased the render time a ridiculous amount. Now you can imagine having hundreds of objects, thousands of polygons, millions of polygons. You can imagine the render time. Some scenes I've worked on have taken hours to render a single frame. So you can understand, you know, how powerful maps are, how powerful shaders are, how much they change, and how, you know, intense things are. People think that our technology has grown incredible amounts. It really hasn't. We haven't really optimized any of this. None of this is really optimized. It's all, you know, basically badly designed and everything. And that's life, you know. Oh well. So as you can see, quite a bit of a difference. We're getting quite a bit of a shadow along there. And as you can see, throughout the entire background image, we're getting more of a shadow. As you can see, it gets bumped out even more. Some of these rocks even appear to start rising almost above, like, you know, the bottom of this box, which is really nice to see. Really good to see that. Now all we got to do is take this, let's copy it, go into box, edit, and paste. You guys ready? And this is going to take a long time. That took nearly a minute to render out. The next one is going to take a minute, maybe 2 minutes to render out, so I've got some time to talk to you guys. We got basic anti-aliasing on it. My render threads are 4. Render threads, I realized that I originally used to have it on 64. It doesn't really make a huge difference. It can a little bit. But the render threads I generally kept with, I kept at 64. I realized by switching it to 4, I actually gained I gained speed on my render time, and primarily that's because I've got a quad core in my computer, and that's primarily why it's you know, got that additional you know, additional speed to it. But I'm sure there's a few other reasons. You know, if I'll show you where the render threads are. You're going to want to play around with it, you know, find out what works best for you. And once you're done playing around with it, you're going to want to, you know, obviously take a look at it to make sure that it looks nice. The render threads can be found under Render Globals, General, or no, under Render, and it's right at the bottom, multi-threading. You know, if you've got an Intel quad core, and you can hyper-thread it to 8 cores, you might as well just go with 8 threads as a result. But you know, you play around with these. You can choose automatic if you just don't trust yourself or you're too lazy. We can turn on noise reduction. Nah, there'd be no point, not at this point. So as you can see, it's darkened it up a bit, and that's because of the ambient occlusion. One thing I don't like is it unfortunately hasn't seemed to have done it to the top layer of it, which is a disappointment. Let's try switching this over to y equals x to the power of 2 and see if that'll work any better. It'll take longer once again. So a minute 7 seconds on that one. This might take a minute 30 seconds. Once you deal with ambient on collision, you'll notice that it will just slow the fuck right down. That's primarily because of the anti-aliasing required for it. You know, obviously the sampling that the occlusion has on its own, the sampling that you've added, it's so much stuff being toppled on top of other stuff. And I've got a decent computer. It's not, I can't play the newest games that are out today, but you know, a couple years ago, this computer could play any game. It's It's a quad core 2.3 gigahertz. It's really not that bad at all in any way. And as you can see, it really just it chugs along and slows down when it comes to dealing with this. 56 seconds, it actually didn't slow down. Actually, it kind of sped up a little bit. So now we're actually we removed it from the box because adding it to the box didn't really work very well for the top part. I can't really say exactly why, but that's just how life turned out. So we're gonna ignore it, and instead we're gonna focus on the ground. We added y equals x to the power of 2 to the ground, and hopefully that'll make it just a little bit darker along these edges here. That's what I'm hoping for. We might also try ordered instead of random. See what that gets for us. So now if we take a render with it turned off, we can take a look at the comparison. So if we find that it's just not really adding it to the edge of the box, which I mean it kind of isn't, one thing that we can try is we can try inserting that box directly into the ground itself. Like, it adds it a little bit. It might add it just enough to work. But let's take the box itself and let's just dip it into the ground ever so slightly. The problem with doing this is that it will affect our radiosity later on, which can cause slight problems. But I'm not too worried about it. It's not really going to cause huge problems. It makes it slightly unoptimized, but it should be fine, I imagine. If not, I'll kill myself because that's fucking crazy. We might also try turning off that ray trace occlusion just to see how that affects things. Because honestly, I've never quite done that. So I'm interested to see what it does. I told you I did tell you that this was going to be quite a long tutorial. It's been a good few parts now, and this is still just on the basic. We have yet to add displacement maps to it, which require high polygon counts and subpatching. Don't know what I'm doing, just waiting. Nothing to really talk about. We're kind of done for the for the basic this is 6 polygons, guys. This is, anyone has to admit, this is pretty damn good for 6 polygons. Yeah, I think it helped just a little bit. Let's go about turning that off. See how much that changes, if anything. I don't usually play with these settings. Having it set to realistic on defaults works like perfectly. I mean, all right. I mean, whatever works towards the end of the day, right? Sorry. If I've been coughing quite a lot, I think I'm starting to lose my voice ever so slightly. It's quite annoying. I might be my asthma, I might not be. Excuse me for a second. I see. So it helps fix the anti-aliasing on it. So we're going to keep that on just because it helps it make it look a little bit nicer. And oh boy, there's not a whole lot more we can do. Not that I really know of. We can try taking a look at some other shaders. I don't think I have it anymore. Yeah, We have LightWave Rust. That might work kind of okay with this, but I rarely ever use it, so I generally use the nodal occlusion for Rust because it works really well. Anyways, I mean, I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. That's pretty much what we got. I can't say I really... Oh my god. I'm such an idiot. I'm so sorry, guys. I talked about radiosity before, and I didn't even, you know, go towards doing it. So I hope none of you left before I got to radiosity here. But we're going to do radiosity next. Radiosity is the option that you turn on in LightWave. It will take light and it will calculate it as it bounces from object to object. Now, by doing this, it will not only take the light and make everything brighter, kind of, but it actually makes it more realistic, because in real life, light bounces off every single object in the world, and it bounces multiple times, hundreds of times, maybe infinite amounts of times, and as a result, you know, everything in the world is lit. There's no such thing as perfect darkness. You know, if you create a completely sealed off box, light gets in there as you're making the box, and it bounces around so many times that even once you completely seal off that box, there will be light bouncing around. Scientists have actually proven this. They've created perfectly sealed off boxes, and they've tried to just get a point in which there's 0.000% light in a box or in anything, and there's just no such thing. It just doesn't seem to be really possible with our technology, at any rate. You can't really say anything's impossible. I mean, technology evolves, right? But radiosity will calculate light. It will see where light bounces, and it will basically say, okay, it bounces, say, off this part of the rock here, taking into consideration the bump and the normal, and it's going to bounce off at an angle and hit here, and then it's going to bounce off at an angle and bounce off an angle and then hit here, and then bounce off an angle and hit here, and it's going to do that. Let's say we set it to 200 times, and then another ray of light will come in and it will do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again, and it will do that, say, 400 times, and it basically calculates every single step of light, and then they'll even do secondary bounces, and secondary bounces are sort of like offset bounces. So it will send it in again, and then instead of bouncing perfectly, because there's two options, there's secondary and then there's primary. The primary will come down and it will bounce straight up. You know, if the light is at an angle, then it will come down and then bounce like that. You know, and then it will come down and it'll bounce like that. It comes down perfectly and then bounces off perfectly. Secondary bounces do not do that. They come down and then they will bounce off at an angle, and bouncing off at a random angle will cause it to be able to bounce off more objects. And this is